you got to realize that whatever you're doing, you're competing with somebody. What is it that gives you an advantage over your competition? Whatever you're good at, try to be great at it. And if you're great at it, good things will happen.
Maverick Podcast.
I'm far from average. That's why I had to come sit down and chop it up with DJ Maverick. They know my name from coast to coast and even in Dallas. I use my talent when I'm faced with a challenge. Gratitude strength is my magnet. Close your eyes and imagine. If you can see it in your mind, then you can have it.
Maverick Podcast.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us. This is the Maverick Podcast. I'm your host, DJ Maverick. Today we have a Tejano legend in the house, the one and only Tony Guerrero. Welcome to the pod.
Maverick, thank you for having me. First of all, I'd like to send a shout out to everybody watching. Con un fuerte abrazo y un besote. ¡Mua! De parte de Tony Guerrero y la Sombra de Chicago.
For the 1% of the people out there that don't know who you are, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I mentioned my name, Tony Guerrero. I am the founder of La Sombra de Chicago. The group initiated up there in Illinois. I lived in a little suburb of Chicago by the name of Aurora, Illinois, and it's like 20 minutes out of Chicago. And I formed the group over there. And being so close to Chicago, y no salíamos de Chicago. You know, we were always there all week, every weekend performing. So I decided to add Chicago.
Number one show band in the U.S.
Yeah. Johnny Canales gave us that name, the number one show band in the USA. But yeah, we had little side names on the side, you know, like we just mentioned.
Yeah, but you guys earned that. I mean, when I go back and watch some of the videos, you guys were doing some really innovative stuff, even with the wardrobe, with the choreography, the type of music. You were doing English and Spanish. You were blending hip hop. You were, rapping at the time. Lots of innovative stuff. You know, what made you do that? What made you want to push those boundaries in Tejano music? Because probably at the time, Tejano music was more like polkas, accordion, more traditional stuff, right?
Yeah. Actually, when I first started getting into music, I wanted to be like Michael Jackson, man, but there's nobody that can be like Michael Jackson, you know?
Yeah.
But I tried. You know, I would go in the basement and I loved hip hop, R&B music, you know, and then that's what I really wanted to do, you know, and then I started listening to Tejano music. Bands would come from the state of Texas to the Chicago area, and I started getting into Tejano music. Me being involved with the R&B and hip hop, later on, I met which was Pepper, the Gonzalez brothers, which were the guitar and bass player for La Sombra, and when I met them, they had a rock band. They had a rock band, a 3-piece rock band, which was Harvey on bass, Pepper on guitar and vocals, and then they have another brother that was playing. Oh, before I go on, God rest his soul, Pepper. He passed away a couple years ago from COVID. God rest his soul.
Yeah, gone too soon for sure. That guy, legend for sure.
Yeah. Him and his brothers had a rock band. So when I got La Sombra together, and when I first started La Sombra, I had a cousin of mine playing guitar, and then he ended up leaving the band. So we kind of like knew Pepper from school and stuff like that. So Pepper came in, you know, before his brother Harvey. Long story short, you know, that's where you got the mixture of hip hop, R&B, rap music, and rock and roll into La Sombra, you know.
Yeah. And
nobody was doing anything like that in the Tejano scene. So we mixed that up a little bit with the rock, the hip hop, R&B with the Tejano, and it worked. And mostly that's what kind of kept us aside from everybody else, you know, that all the choreography and stuff like that. We added a lot of that to our shows, you know, and not only in the hip hop and rock, but also in the Tejano music.
Definitely.
And it made us a little bit different than everybody else, you know, and that was one of the things that really, you know, caught a lot of eye, you know.
Mm-hmm. My understanding is that you founded La Sombra like at 11 or 12. Is that right? That early?
Yeah, that early.
Yeah.
That early. I started with I do. My first instruments is brass, horns, saxons, trumpets, saxophones, and then drums. So when I started getting into Tejano music, I would love these Carlos Guzman back in the day, Los Jóvenes. They had 3 trumpets, and stuff like that. And I loved the horn sections. And so I asked my dad to give me a trumpet. And I would spin back then vinyl records, I would spin the records and I tried to play and I couldn't figure it out, I couldn't figure it out. So I thought it was too hard for me. So I asked my dad, can you give me a saxophone? So my dad went and traded my trumpet or cornet at the time for a saxophone. And I tried the same thing. I would spin the records and try to play what the horn players were playing.
Yeah.
So I couldn't figure it out, So at that time, my brother Cruz, who is a keyboard player for La Sombra back then and now still, at the time he was playing with another band that are also family to us. They were all cousins and brothers. My brother was the keyboard player for them. Well, they used to have their equipment in our basement up there, in the north. They have houses have basements and stuff like that.
Sure.
So when I was trying to figure out the trumpet and the saxophone, I couldn't learn it. So having their equipment in our basement, I started messing with my brother's keyboard, and I don't know, I picked up the keyboard. I learned the keyboard, so I figured it out and learned how to play it, so. And then that's how pretty much I got into music. As far as singing, that came from my mom, I think,
Okay.
When I was real little, my mom would always sit me on her laps. And she would sing to me, and she would sing so much to me that at a young age, I started learning Spanish, listening to her sing and then I would start singing with her. And then as I started singing with her, she would start harmonizing me.
Oh,
and that sounds pretty cool, So I think all the learning how to sing and the harmonizing and all that, I got it from her, so I was pretty young when I started. And like I said, my passion for music was hip hop and R&B. I started playing keyboards with a top 40 band by the title of Inspiration Band in Aurora, Illinois. We would play locally, and I started playing keyboards with them,
like a cover type of band, like just whoever's hot.
Yeah. Okay. And we would do top 40, and then I was invited to go play keyboards with the Spanish band, doing all cumbias and stuff like that. And during all this time, I started thinking, I want to play Tejano music, And so I started getting Tejano music, and like I said, it all just came together, the hip hop and R&B, the rock and roll, and the Tejano music at a real young age. So yes, I was 11 years old when I 10, 11 years old when I started wanting to learn how to play an instrument. And by the age of 13, I had a 4-piece band named La Sombra.
That's incredible. How'd you come up with La Sombra? Because La Sombra is really unique too, right? So how'd you come up with La Sombra that early?
Well, like I said, going back, my brother and our cousins had all their equipment in my basement.
Okay.
So when I was trying to come up with the name, one of my cousins in the band my brother was in goes to me, and they were called La Conexión Latina, the Latin Connection at the time. So one of my cousins says, why don't you call it La Sombra de la Conexión Latina, the shadow of the Latin connection,
That's long.
Yeah. So I went and asked my mom. I mean, I was only 11, 12 years old, And so when I asked my mom, I told my mom, I said, my cousin says, why don't we call it La Sombra de la Conexión? My mom kind of like right away, God rest her soul, love you, mommy. She goes, mijo, you're nobody's shadow, So if you want, you can call it La Shadow, La Sombra,
Okay.
So
love that. Yeah.
So it's stated, it just says La Sombra, and I listened to my mom, and that's where the name came from.
Yeah.
A little part from my cousin and a little part from my mom.
Why do you think you gravitated towards Tejano, right? Because you're in Chicago, you're listening to hip hop, R&B, all this stuff that's hot. How did you gravitate towards Tejano?
I was born in Brownsville, Texas. I was raised up in the north. We ended up north, going to work as migrant workers, working in the fields and stuff like that. I mean, you name it, we picked it. Tomatoes, sandia, manzana, whatever, elote, we used to pick it. And we would sing in the fields, after a little bit, but like I said, on the weekends where in Aurora, they had a Tejano dances every Sundays.
Okay.
And my older brother, like I said, he was in the band, and my sisters, they would all go to the dances. I was still a little kid, but I could hear all the commotion, they're getting ready to go to the dance and stuff like that, and then I think that's when I started, one of the times that I started listening to Tejano music, and I got into it, and like I said earlier, bands from Texas coming to Aurora and Chicago, in the Chicago area, through the whole Midwest,
Yeah.
And I think that's what caught my attention. Besides what I didn't know I was gonna put everything together. That what my mom was teaching me, what I had learned in the keyboard, and then later on, I saw that accordion was very popular in Tejano music also. So, but I didn't have nobody to play accordion. And so I said, I'm just going to try to learn it myself.
Man, that's a hard instrument too to learn.
Yeah.
Accordion, that's super hard.
Yeah. I don't play it the way a lot of these awesome musicians, accordion players play it, but I did a lot of showmanship to it. That's one of the things that I brought different to the Tejano scene, where I didn't play too much. I didn't know how to play too much, but all the movement and all this stuff, people were like, wow, man, this guy can play accordion. But it wasn't playing the accordion, it was all the movement and stuff like that. But, and people liked that, and that's how it, more or less everything started,
You got on the radar of all the Tejano lovers out there. What do you think was that launching point for you guys?
Well, we did a show in Iowa, and we had a record label come check us out, and right there and then they said, "Man, we'll take you guys. We'll sign you guys," and it was pretty awesome. That we were opening up a lot of people's eyes. And from there we started. And I mean, it don't get me wrong, it was hard though, man. I mean, I remember one time we had to sneak in a barn to we couldn't afford to pay for the hotels.
Oh, really?
Hotel room. So we snuck in this barn and we slept in there in the barn, And but a lot of bands go through stuff like that, and a lot of them don't want to go through it, and they don't, But I mean, when you love it so much, I loved music, and it was. Let me put it this way: it was a little harder for us because we were from so far, and most of the Tejano music is in Texas, so we couldn't go play a weekend and then come back home to Chicago, and they'll go back next weekend and back. We couldn't be going back every weekend at the time. The name was getting very powerful, but it was still hard, being able to come all the way back into it.
Yeah, I can definitely see that because at the time, no social media, right? So you can't really, publicize your music that way. So you have to physically tour and visit places, right? So
yes.
When you're doing that, I heard the rumor that back in the time, going back to the name, the #1 show band in the U.S., I heard that a lot of bands back in the day were afraid of you guys even being openers or being on the same, bill as them because they're like, these guys are going to bring it with the choreography, the wardrobe, everything. They're going to make us look bad, right? Is that true or not? I heard that rumor that a lot of bands were like, man, if La Sombra's there, I don't know if I want to be on that bill.
Well, I'm not going to lie. It is very true. Like I said earlier, it was one of the things that made us different, and because nobody had seen that in the Tejano scene, you know, and it made us totally different. And yes, a lot of groups wouldn't play with us because for that reason, and a lot of groups wanted to be like La Sombra also, you know. My advice to anybody out there, I mean, even myself, you know, I learned it as I went, but like I said earlier, I wanted to be like Michael Jackson. But always be yourself, you know, always be yourself, and being ourselves and mixing what we did worked for us.
Yeah.
We were being ourselves. We were bringing something different to the scene in Tejano music, and it worked, you know. And we were recording original songs. I'm sending a shout out to my sister Maria Luisa Jean Ramirez, who wrote many
she wrote
of
a ton of them, right? A ton of your songs.
Yeah, she wrote a lot of gold and platinum hits for La Sombra, you know, and that just kept us going, you know. It started opening up my eyes and go, wow, this is pretty awesome, you know. And and the one of the top things is that when you're original, you know, and you write your own music, your own song and stuff like that, and people like you, they're liking you because of what you create, you know, not because you're copying somebody else, you know. So that's how I feel about it, you know, and that's how I saw it.
Definitely. I think one of the things that I love about La Sombra too, it's like a family business, right? So you mentioned your sister was writing songs, you had a brother playing the keyboards, and then I heard Gavino. Not only was he singing and part of the band, but he was part of the wardrobe and designing. Is that right?
Yes, my little brother. We had like 3 little sections in the group. When I first started the band La Sombra, my brothers were not in there. It was just, like I said, it was just a 4-piece band. It was me playing keyboards and singing, my cousin Frankie on guitar. My nephew Jesse was on the drums. Jesse was the original drummer. For a long time, and then the bass player was Henry Salas. We used to go to school together back in the day, and yes, and then later on, my brothers came in the band, you know, and we had little departments in the band where I was in charge of all the material we recorded, the songs that we recorded, and I've always been the producer and arranger for all the music for La Sombra. My brother Cruz was in charge of making sure that we all got up in time, and you know, got to the show, and then everything was set up in time for the show, you know. And my brother Gavino was in charge of all the choreography and stuff like that, with a little help from our nephews that came in the band later also, which are now the Cumbia Kings and K1, you know. And I'd like to send a shout out to my nephew Trilogy Mafia too, who's a part of the band. As the years went by, little changes started to happen, you know, and my brother Gavino was in charge of all that, you know, and of course he recorded also his own songs. He would record 1 or 2 songs on every Sombra album, and then after the years went by, we recorded him maybe 3 or 4 solo albums where Gavino would sing all the songs. You know, it was a big family. It still is a family thing. My brother Cruz is still there, and my son Marco is there now too. You know?
Shout out to Marco.
Yeah,
I love that, because I think that's really cool, because I mean that just shows that you guys are, you know, tight knit, and then you guys are also like huge supporters of one another. Even Marco was mentioning with his cousins and everything that they like to support each other, and he enjoys, you know, kind of being like a role model, right, for the younger, you know, members of the family. So I love that about them. So really cool that you guys are carrying that tradition. Very
talented kid, you know, and very smart. And nowadays I have to be asking him, hey, mijo, how do I do this? Hey, mijo, how do I do that? You know, but he's a very smart kid, very talented, doing all his own thing. And the biggest surprise he has given me, I would take him to school every day, you know, and I would drive him to school, and I would always let him play what he wanted to play in the car, whether it was the radio or a CD, you know. And I would just listen to, me being involved in music, I would listen to everything he would play. And if I liked something, I would ask him, who's that, mijo? And he would tell me who the band was. And so, and one day, I didn't know he was doing what he was doing. You know, I didn't know anything. And one of those mornings, he plays a song on a CD, and I liked it. And I asked him, "Who's that, mijo?" He goes, "Me."
No way. That's cool.
Yeah. And I said, "What?" He goes, "That's me, Dad."
Yeah.
I go, "Are you serious?" And like I said, I would, if I liked something, I would ask him, "Who is it?" And he would tell me. So it was kind of hard for me to believe him because I didn't know he was doing all this, And he said, "Yeah, it's me, Dad." I go, "Who did the music?" He goes, "I did." I said, "Who did the lyrics?" He goes, "I did." I said, "Wow, that's awesome, Marco." And he's doing great.
Yeah,
Awesome.
shout out to Marco. He did mention that there was a lot of pressure. He's like, singing in front of my dad is like singing in front of like American Idol or something. He was like, he's gonna call me out. So he's like, there's a lot of pressure, but I'm getting more comfortable with singing. So that was good.
Yeah. Actually, there was a lot of pressure that he even asked me if he could go live with his mom, and I said, "Yeah." I think all his friends were over there in the area where his mom lived. I don't know exactly, but he was, I think he really didn't want to do music at the time. But look at where he ended up at. So, but he's doing great. He's doing great with what he does, and he's doing great. I'm gonna say, I was like in a hole, a real deep down dark hole. And I'm not talking about La Sombra. I'm talking about me personally. I had real bad health issues. All of a sudden my health just took a completely turn, and I almost died.
Wow. Let's talk about that, because you've been in the business forever, and probably the only time that you probably stopped playing with La Sombra is probably when you ran into these health issues, right? So
yes,
tell me about that. It just kind of snuck up on you, or what happened?
Yeah, bro. It just kind of snuck up on me. I back in 2006, I think 2006, 2007, I started then. I had diverticulitis, with your intestines and stuff like that. I started having problems, and I had a surgery back then, and time went by. But in 2019, then 2020. I had 11 surgeries. The infection came back really, really bad. It has affected me a lot, and it got to the point to where I just wanted to give up on everything, and I felt like I couldn't breathe and stuff like that or anything, and so I came and moved in with my son Marco. And he started pushing me, So I promised God, man, he would take me for a walk, and not even around the block. I would have to lay down on the sidewalk because I couldn't breathe.
Wow.
And just going around the block, and he kept pushing me and pushing me and pushing me, and he told me things like that. Every day you go to the gym, it's another day you get to live. I said, "Okay, mijo." So now I go and walk 3, 4, 5 miles by myself, and he kept pushing me and pushing me. But yes, man, I was really sick. I was in a hole, to where I didn't think I was gonna die.
I bet that's challenging, right? Because challenging, of course, because you want to be there for your family, you want to be there, but then also challenging from a performance perspective, because you're used to being on stages and playing with bands and stuff like that. And all of a sudden you can't do that, right? So I bet you were super frustrated with that too, right?
Yeah, actually I still am. I still have little issues, but Marco has helped me so much, that it's brought the shine back, the light back to not only me but La Sombra also, because me giving up on myself, not that I wanted to, but it was happening, It was like also going to be a failure for La Sombra. So mijo helping me out, I feel like he helped La Sombra too. Of course, the guys, that stuck around also, the guys in the band, which is my brother Cruz, Bobby, now it's Pete and Cricket, and my son Marco, myself, Albert and Ray, they they stuck around, and but I feel like my son really did. When he helped me, he was helping La Sombra also.
Yeah, I love that, because then now also he's holding you accountable, right? So he's like, hey, are you working out in the gym or whatever? Sometimes I see your posts and you're like, I'm not going to tell Marco that I was here, because he's like, I didn't sweat enough and he's going to call me out.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I feel like now he's a parent and I'm the child,
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but in reality, that's the way it is, that's the way I see life, our children, we taking care of them as babies, and as we get older, depending, once you get in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, you ya estás viejito, and
Yeah.
it turns back around to you being an adult baby. The los viejitos, they need to be taken care of.
How do you stay motivated to continue to perform, continue to produce new music?
I feel it in my heart, man. I feel it in my heart, and it will never stop. I will never stop performing. I will keep performing hasta que Dios no quiera.
Yeah.
And until the Lord decides that, hey, you're done. Other than that, I love music. It comes from the heart, man. I'm writing a song or two almost every day. I have lots of songs, lots of lyrics, and I tell myself, I said, wow, it's coming out naturally. It used to be very hard for me back in the day, but now, like I said, I'm writing like almost 2 songs a day, sometimes 3, but 1 for sure, and lately, that's the way it's been going, and to me, I think of myself as when I think of myself as a songwriter, I think about Marco, how, to me, to be a rapper, man, you gotta be a 2-3 times better songwriter than the originals, because, man, as a rapper, you could go lyric after lyric after lyric after lyric, non-stop, writing a song, you write 4 lines, then you write another 4 lines, and then the hook part. But in rapping, you gotta constantly be coming up with some kind of word or something.
For sure. Although you were a rapper yourself, and Marco said that you had some aspirations to be a rapper, right? I remember that one song was like, oye, chiquinena, ¿qué es lo que te pasa? The words around that you may live por otro.
That's where I see Marco better than me, because I rapped those songs, but I didn't write them. My sister did.
Okay.
So my sister that's why I would record a lot of her songs, because I always felt that she was 10 times better songwriter than me. So in a way, it was like a business decision too, and that's how I see Marco, and or any rapper. I know some I hated to say this, but it's reality. I know some people see some rappers as their, I don't know if this is the right word for me to say, is that they're not that good,
Yeah.
But in reality, not that they're not that good, it's just maybe they need to focus on how they're going to put it together and stuff like that, And because I know there's people out there better than me, a lot of people better than me. There's always somebody out there.
Did you get pushback when you guys were, pushing that boundary? Because I remember you guys were even doing like Guns N' Roses. You were doing like Welcome to the Jungle, performing all these songs where like the traditional Tejano people were giving you pushback and saying, hey, this is not Tejano. What is La Sombra doing? Did you guys get any negative feedback when you guys were doing that?
Never, bro. Never.
Okay.
I, as far as me, I never got anything. I mean, I would get a lot of how do you say it? A lot of compliments.
Okay.
Hey, we like the way you guys start to show up with the English song, and then boom, you come in with the Tejano, and all the effects and stuff like that. I never got to this day, La Sombra's been here for almost 40 years, a little bit over 40 years, and to this day I have never gotten a negative comment on that.
If you don't pronounce Spanish correctly, or if you're doing something that, that goes outside of traditional Tejano, how do you think that Tejano music, current state, what is Tejano music like right now?
Well, us, when I say us, it's here in the United States, I don't know, I still don't know how to speak my proper Spanish, and I'm still the way Selena was back in the day,
Yeah.
but I do pay more attention to it now, because because one time I was in Mexico City, way down there in Mexico City, and I was doing a radio interview at 1:00 in the morning. We started at 7 in the morning doing radio interviews around the area of Mexico City, all the way till it was 1:00 already. I think it was our last interview, and and the guy brought it up and he put me on the spot. He goes, "Hey, why did you say this word like this on this song?" You know what I'm saying? And I didn't even notice it till he brought it up, and the song had already been out. So my reaction was like, "That's the way I talk."
Yeah.
And it's a little different. We speak it a little different. I wish I could speak it the way they do, though. Because I love the language, the Spanish language. And a veces, I don't know if maybe I'm a little lazy, pero I speak both English and Spanish, and I get by. Pero I wish I could como te digo, speak it the way they do. Los Mexicanos, they speak that proper Spanish, and I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think, it has its pros and cons because Tejano music brings different elements, right? Sometimes I'm listening to a Tejano track and I can hear some jazz, I can hear some rock, I can hear some R&B. Sometimes in traditional Mexican music, it's real standard, right? The drums are like real, no arreglos, nothing, right?
It's like a Texas thing, and then, but it sounds great. I mean, you asked me a little while ago. I'm gonna go back, rewind a little bit. You asked me if I got any negative comments on us performing a rock song or R&B.
Yeah.
Never got one, but I did get, I would say, a little negative comment, and people asking, "Hey, why don't you put more accordion in your instead of complaining about the rock or they would say something, hey, maybe you should put more accordion on the." Because Tejano people love accordion and stuff like that, and I love it too. Like I said earlier, I didn't have nobody to play it, so I had to learn. I learned it myself. And but yeah, la música tejana, the Tejano music is it's all those elements together that, like you said, the jazz, a little mixture of jazz, country, Tejano. It's a little mixture of everything,
For sure.
And,
yeah, tell me about the different record labels, right? So I know Freddie Records, Fonovisa, EMI. What was that journey like for La Sombra? I'm sure it was like different experiences at the different record labels. Which one did you enjoy the most? What were some of those challenges going from record label to record label?
Honestly, I enjoyed them all. In the beginning, I enjoyed them all. There's always little things here and there, como te digo, that should be up front from the beginning, and I think an artist should be treated, fair. And I felt like we were being treated fair in the beginning, and towards the time we were there, it's like like taking advantage of you or something like that. I don't know if that's the proper word. Yeah. Pretty much the record label that was pretty much up front with us, it was EMI, a little bit of Fonovisa,
Okay.
So.
Yeah, because I think, a lot of people, especially artists, sometimes forget that the music business is a business, right? So you have to approach it as a business. Sometimes if you're going to sign something or whatever, you have to bring your lawyer. You have to make sure that the deal is a deal that is valuable for you, right? So what is probably the biggest lesson learned that you would say you've learned being in the music industry for so long? What's a tip that you would give for upcoming musicians that you have learned personally?
Exactly what you said right now about a lawyer, but man, make sure you've been friends with the lawyer for so many years too. You
got to watch out the lawyer too, huh?
Yeah, bro. Yeah. And I've been here 40 years, and I've had little problems here and there with everybody, and so you got to be careful. My advice is, like I said, make sure you know the lawyer very good too, and take it from there.
Yeah.
Because I've been through it all, and La Sombra's been blackballed and stuff like that, and me getting sick. A lot of people, I've heard some of that, that the La Sombra faded away for a little bit, but it's not that the music was not good, it's that it was being blackballed and then me getting sick, and all that. So, pero aquí andamos echándole ganas, otra vez,
What you're saying, con ánimo, right?
Y con ánimo, porque sin ánimo no se hace nada.
I love that.
Chiquitita.
What's your favorite Sombra story? I know you mentioned the story about sneaking into a barn and sleeping in a barn, but what's like one of your favorite Sombra stories that maybe some of the viewers aren't familiar with?
We did a show with Prince once.
No way.
Yes.
Really?
Yeah, in Chicago actually.
Mm.
I didn't get to meet him or anything like that. Actually because they had different stages, and he was playing it was an outdoor event, and he was playing in one stage and we were playing at another stage, and then they had other stages. So I didn't get to see him or meet him or anything, but I know we did a show with him. So
Wow, that's incredible. But that just goes to show you just how flexible and how unique you guys were with your sound, where you can be, on a stage with Prince, right? Think about some of the bands, especially around that time. Who else could you put, next to Prince and be like, yeah, they'll fit right in, right?
yeah. I mean, we did a lot of shows with different artists that were not Tejano artists. We did shows like with Hall and Oates. We did a couple of shows with the Jets. I don't know if you remember the Jets.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we did different shows. With who was it? Maybe it was George Strait. We were doing in the Valley. This was back in the '80s, bro.
Mm-hmm.
Late '80s. That we did these big shows. There was a lot going on. La Sombra was really popping back then.
Yeah. Would you say that Mi Güerita Coca-Cola is kind of the single that kind of launched you guys, or what was like the biggest single that after that things changed for La Sombra?
Yeah, in the beginning it was Mi Güerita Coca-Cola. The album went gold, and the song was written by my sister, Maria Luisa G. Ramirez. And after that, there was many big hits that we had, and a lot of times when I mention her name on media, I usually say to the gold and platinum songwriter, my sister Maria Luisa Jean Ramirez, because the reason I do that was because, she really never got recognized, or she never got awarded. Here's La Sombra with so many gold and platinum records, but yet she's never gotten nominated or como te digo,
just acknowledged, right?
Yeah, for so. Mm-hmm. Then again, we didn't need anybody to do it. We did it ourselves, and a lot of people know, that in the industry where the songs came from, a lot of the songs came from, my sister Maria Luisa G. Ramirez.
What are some of the songs? So for sure, Mi Güerita Coca-Cola. What other songs did she write for you guys?
She wrote Que Lejos Se Quedó. She wrote Pepe Le Pew. She wrote El Sancho. She wrote La Sancha. I can go on. She wrote so many songs that were actually El Sancho got a Grammy nomination. So that was the only thing. When I say she wasn't acknowledged, it's all we hear in the Tejano industry. But she got acknowledged, and La Sombra got acknowledged for a golden platinum. A Grammy nomination.
That's incredible. So I always like to ask my guests, if I pull up your playlist, who am I going to find on your playlist? So I'm super curious. What are you listening to? If I pull up the playlist, who's Tony listening to right now?
Right now? Mm-hmm. Well, I'm listening to Maverick right now.
For sure. Love that. Yeah.
So tune in, people. Listen to Maverick. That's what's up. Yeah. Man, I don't know, man. There's a, I what I listen to is totally different than listening to Tejano music.
Okay.
You know, I love to listen to acoustic music and females. You know, I like to listen to females who sing with maybe just playing a guitar, just the vocal and guitar, and maybe a piano in there, But that's what I usually listen to,
And growing up, you mentioned R&B, right? So
yeah, now
what were the influences as a kid? What were the influences that kind of created that sombra sound? Like, do you remember, 11-year-old you, 12-year-old you, what were you listening to?
Motley Crue, as far as the rock side, and Michael Jackson, Bobby Brown, Whitney Houston, and stuff like that. Artists like that.
Yeah.
That's what I would listen to back then. And of course, a little bit of Tejano also, and I'm going to mention some names, like I said, I tried to pick up learn a trumpet and saxophone, and I couldn't. And then I picked up the keyboard by myself, just messing with it there in our basement, my brother's keyboard. And I had a habit back in Aurora, the place they would do the dance, Tejano dances on Sundays. They would, I would go see the bands. I was really young kid, man. I'm 11, 12 years old, and the keyboard players had a thing of always. It was the stage, and on both sides they had stairs, like maybe about 8-10 steps to the stage.
Okay.
And the keyboard players would always usually set up next to the steps. And when the band would come up on it, I would always go sit on the steps, and I would listen to the keyboard players, and they were awesome. And there's a couple of them that's like three or that I remember that I remember the name was Armando Hinojosa and Julian, and I don't know him. I've always known him by the Rat. Okay. I've never known his real name, but they used to call him the Rat, and awesomeness keyboard players.
What are you excited about now?
Man, we got a lot of stuff coming up. Pretty much my son Marco is the owner.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if he's listening to me or not, or if he'll get upset if I say this or not. But I see it as pretty much as Marco is the owner. And he's got a lot of good plans for La Sombra. I'm not going to say too much because I don't know exactly what's going to come out, but it's a lot of exciting things, We do have some shows coming up here in the Texas area right now. That we'll be promoting, so keep an eye out, for that. And as far as recordings también, of recordings, hopefully Marco says that, we're going to try to get it out by the end of this year. Hopefully I'm trying to get it out earlier, and, but that's what we have right now, and then we're working with different artists also, we have a lot of songs, we produce a lot, we arrange a lot, we write a lot together, me and my son Marco, we're telling ourselves that two brains is better than one. So, so I guess we get along pretty good in that sometimes, we're still father and son.
For sure.
Yeah,
that's incredible because I think you guys both share that love and that passion for music. So you guys will probably, develop that relationship around that, right? So it's an incredible thing to share that with your son. That's really cool.
Yes, and as a parent, I see him as a fan. He's an awesome person, awesome producer, awesome rapper, awesome singer. He's how they say that apple don't follow too far from the tree, Maybe that's what it is, but in his own person, he's like that. Now, as a father, also the same thing. Everything I just said, the same. I see him, mijo, the way I said it, as a fan and as a father, So He's an awesome kid.
So if I put you on the spot and I make you pick one of your albums of La Sombra that's your favorite, which project of La Sombra do you think is like, brings back wonderful memories, or just is a favorite just because you had to be creative or whatever the case may be?
Which album?
Yeah.
It would have to be the Sancho one.
Sancho. Okay.
Yeah. The one that got nominated for a Grammy. It sold over 150,000 copies in the first quarter of the year.
Wow.
So it's very, very, it's a highlight, and, I see myself as just as any ordinary person, that's the way God made us, all of us, and I'm no better than you and you're no better than me. That's the way I see things, but sometimes I see things like, wow, did we really do that? Did was it really us who changed the scene in the Tejano music scene?
Yeah.
I see things like that, and then I see, like, for example, wrestling, and they call these people icons, and they made history and this and that, and then when they tell it to me, inside I tell myself, okay, but.
Yeah, you're like, are they talking about me? Is it right?
Yeah, and I just see myself as an ordinary person. That's how I see myself, and that's how I treat people.
Yeah.
And because I feel like that's the way God made us.
Yeah, I would say that you are being humble, because if you ask me, La Sombra definitely influenced a lot of the cumbia songs and a lot of the bands, right? I can definitely see elements of La Sombra in bands like Cumbia Kings and all these bandas that came up and they were doing different things, incorporating R&B, incorporating choreography, wardrobe, all that. If you ask me, La Sombra touched a bunch of bands in Tejano and just music in general.
Yes, we did, and thank you for your comment. Everybody watching, listen to Maverick. He tells the truth. He don't lie.
Right? Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of family came out of this band, and a lot of groups came out of this. The Cumbia Kings, one of the most successful bands, came out of here.
A lot of people probably don't know that, but some of your nephews are kind of the members of the Cumbia Kings, right?
Yeah, actually, the owner of the Cumbia Kings is my nephew, Cruz Martinez.
Okay.
When the Cumbia Kings first started, I'd say 80% was La Sombra.
Wow.
It was my nephew Cruz and AB, and they at the time I was having how do you say it? I was having legal problems, with some people, and so at the time, well, you got to work to eat, So at the time, se juntaron my nephew Cruz and AB, and a lot of my family went over there and they started the Cumbia Kings, So that's how the Cumbia Kings got it started,
Who's maybe a collab or somebody that you would want to work with that you haven't worked with? Think outside the box. I don't know. You tell me. It doesn't necessarily have to be in the Tejano. Yeah.
My son Marco.
Okay.
My son Marco. I mean, there's some artists, that I wouldn't mind doing collaboration with, and I don't know if they would want to do it with me, but there's some out there that I would but I would love to do one with my son Marco, and take it from there. Let me see. Maybe Gabriel Zavala. Gabriel Zavala is an awesome person.
Okay.
He's come a long way.
Yeah, for sure.
Gabriel Zavala has come a long way. And the reason I say that is because, he went through the struggles, and also, and the reason I don't know him personally, but I do know him that at one point we we were going to start a band for Gavino, you know, and Gabriel Zavala was the keyboard player and accordion player that was there for Gavino's band.
Oh, that's cool.
You know, and I don't actually remember what happened, that it didn't happen. I'm trying to think what happened, but, and me and Gabriel Zavala kind of like keep in touch every once in a while. We don't really talk a lot too much, but I feel like he knows me, and I feel like I know him, you know, and I know that I always compliment him, you know, whenever he's doing something or say something that I see, you know, because I know he's done a lot.
He's also grown as a producer, I would say, right? So
Yes, also.
producing other artists as well. So I can definitely see that he's done some of the stuff that you're doing, right? Because now you're also working with artists and producing for other people as well, right?
Yeah, he does that too, you know. So, yes, we have a lot of songs, a lot of lyrics, you know, and a lot of music. And so we've been working with people. As a matter of fact, we just came up to an agreement yesterday, and me and my son Marco, to do a few songs with a couple of female artists. They're one of them is barely starting, you know, she hasn't recorded one, you know, and then there's another one. She's been here and there in San Antonio, and she's doing her thing too. And I've also, for example, my accordion's player is Pete, and we did some songs for him, you know, and he's got a song called out right now, La Probadita. And me and my son Marco wrote and produced and arranged for him. And there's Victoria Isabella, and we did also Ya No Soy La Misma for her, and she's from Peoria, up there right out of Chicago, maybe a couple hours from Chicago. And Pete's from Houston, and he's an accordion player for La Sombra also. So, you know, we do work a lot, you know.
Yeah.
Marco works a lot more than I do, I think, because, you know, he's working on his production, and he helps with La Sombra, and he helps me with the other artists, you know. So
where does Tony feel more at home? Do you feel more at home in Texas, or when you go back to Chicago? Where do you think that you feel more at home?
Well, I would say I feel more at home in Texas, because I was born here in Texas. I was born in Brownsville, Texas. And it's because, I guess, because I'm used to it now. I don't like the weather.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
The weather here in Texas is crazy. But when I go home, man, see, I'm saying when I go home. Right now I'm talking about going back to Chicago, to Aurora. Yeah. When I go back to Aurora, I still have family over there. When I go back to Aurora, I don't want to come back to Texas.
Yeah.
You know, so it's kind of hard, you know, but I would have to say right now, because I live here now, it would be Texas.
Okay, perfect. What would you say? Do you enjoy the music industry and the way that it is now, or do you enjoy it more back, you know, how it was when you first got started? Now every musician can produce their own music, publish their own music. They've got social media. They can do their own PR, right? It's a whole lot different, right? A lot of artists might say, I don't need a record label anymore. Which one do you prefer, do you think?
Either one. I mean, I loved it back then. I do feel like Tejano music was a little bit more stronger back in the 80s and 90s. Yeah. You know, but I do feel that the new Tejano artists don't get the support that they should, you know, and you can't force somebody to like somebody's music, you know, and thank God, thank all the Sombraholics, thank people like you know, for all that La Sombra's been around for over 4 decades, you know.
Yeah, incredible.
You know, we really appreciate you people. Also, La Sombra must be doing something right, you know, that's been around for that long, you know, and I don't see it, Tejano music, as powerful as it was back then, the way it is now, but I do feel that there's a lot of lack of support for the new artists that are coming out now, you know.
Yeah.
And And the difference from now and then is back then there was a lot more keyboard, horns, to Tejano music. Nowadays they call conjunto, regional music, norteño. They call that Tejano music.
Yeah.
So I still see it different because I was in Tejano music, and I've been an artist in Tejano music. So I see a big difference, that from that, that I mean, don't get me wrong. I love all three, conjunto, norteño, regional. I love the accordion. I didn't have nobody to play it, so I had to learn it.
Yeah, for sure.
And but that's a difference that I see right now. But I still have that love for Tejano music. For any kind of music, pretty much. I mean, my passion was hip hop and R&B, but now I'm listening to what I said a little while ago. I guess because I'm older, I like. Well, I've always gotten into Tejano music, hip hop, and R&B. But what I would listen to most was like slow music. I would always listen to like Luis Miguel, Ricardo Montaner, like those kind of ballads. That's what I would listen to, as I was in the 80s and 90s. And now I'm still in Tejano, but now I listen to what I like to hear a lot of females vocals with just the guitar acoustic stuff, and I don't know, maybe it relaxes me, and that's what I listen to now.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you for your time today. I enjoyed the conversation. For everybody out there watching, what's the best way to support your movement, support La Sombra? Where can people find you? I'm going to give you the stage to plug in all your social media and everything.
Anybody watching this, you can find us through Maverick.
Yeah, for sure.
Also,
I'm going to put all your social media in the description so people can check you out for sure.
At La Sombra de Tony G.
Okay,
yeah,
perfect.
At La Sombra de Tony G. There's a fake on TikTok. There's a fake what do you call it?
Just a fake
account. Yeah. There's a fake account on TikTok, and the guy went and changed the name already and everything, because. Anyways, anybody watching us, you can contact us from Maverick or let you guys know what's up with La Sombra also.
All right, perfect. Well,
and
don't
Michael
be a stranger. G. Yeah, Michael G too. Don't be a stranger, man. Anytime you want to, talk about music, we can have a whole pod about Michael Jackson. We could talk about his whole catalog.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the conversation. It's really cool to hear about your story, and keep up Tejano, and La Sombra, like you said, La Sombra. #1 show band, Windy City Boys, so many names, just because you're a legend. I know you said you don't like listening to that, but Tejano icon, the one and only Tony.
Oh, wait, stop, Maverick. I didn't say I didn't like to listen.
Oh, you said you didn't like it, right? You just said that sometimes you like it to me, right?
No, I said I feel just ordinary like everybody else.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
But you can say it all the time you want.
Yeah, my bad. I'll continue to say it.
No, that's cool.
Right.
No, you know what? Thank you very much for having me on your show. I really appreciate it, and I'm sending you a big hug. I'd give it to you in person, if I was there. And a lot of Sombra love to you, bro, and thank you for having me on your show. And God bless everybody out there watching us, and hope to see you when La Sombra's in town. Be looking out for some great things that my son Marco has planned for La Sombra. All right, God bless you. We love you. Thank you, Maverick.
All right, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Super talented, the Tejano icon, the one and only Tony Guerrero on the Maverick Podcast. In dreams, we trust.